Hello and welcome to the League One Lowdown preview show. My name is Sam, and as always, I'm joined by my preview show host, Mr. Callum Davis. How are you, Callum?
Hello, I'm back. I missed the live stream, but I'm back and ready to pass judgment on people spending more money in a single day than I have in my entire existence. Which sums up football, doesn't it?
So as you've touched on there, this week's first half of the show is going to be reviewing every single League One side's January window with a grade of A to E with a U if we think it's terrible, a bit like GCSE grades when we were in school. And then the second half will preview the 8 League One games this weekend, as well as a very quick prediction for the FA Cup ties for this week. But as always, beginning with our Prediction League update, Callum is going to be absolutely delighted with this. Another victorious week for Callum. He got 2 correct scores and 2 correct outcomes, as I got only 4 correct outcomes. So Callum takes a further lead, which now means he's on 168 points to my 151. The battle for meaning I'm going to have to buy a Lincoln City shirt at the end of the season is becoming rather alarming. So
Well, you can buy the charity one and do something good. You know, there's that charity one that's currently on sale. I'm sure the black one as well, that's not very popular, so you could probably get that one on a cheap as well.
Yeah, that's quite a good idea though. I quite like the charity event as well. So
at least we're doing something good for, and you know, write it off as a business expense as well. There you go.
Don't tell Mr. Taxman that. So without further ado, we've got a Bam Pack show. We've got to start with. We're going to start after what happened on the deadline day stream. We thank, I think it was Kelly, the Wrexham fan, who did a super chat for us and said, can you please start from W, because Wrexham is always at the end. We're going to be starting from W today and starting with Wycombe Wanderers, who have had probably the busiest transfer window other than Chelsea in recent history as of last year. No fewer than 10 or 11 new players into the squad. So we'll start with you, Callum. Have they bought too many players?
That's my slight worry. Is January is always kind of like a poison chalice, because it's one of them that you if you're in the state of Wycombe, you know you're going to lose a lot of players. Obviously, with the manager change as well recently, you knew you were going to lose a lot of players, but you don't want to bring in too many, because then how's the squad going to gel together? But then you need to bring in that many, else you'll be in a Reading or a Wigan situation, and you won't have any players. Well, we'll get to Wigan soon, but do you know what I mean? So it's kind of, they were kind of damned if they did, damned if they didn't. I think the players they bought in, a lot of them have got decent quality, and obviously a lot of them are splashing the cash a bit as well on wages as well. So for Wycombe, yeah, not too bad, but it's just it's like, will they end up a bit like, I'm not going to say in the slightest like Burton Albion, but we've seen how long it's taken for those players to come together, and it's cost a manager his job as well. So we'll see.
It's a good point. So what it looks like, they've obviously got a new manager as well. It's a good point you make that, because the players that were there obviously were used to Matt Bloomfield. They've done okay since he's gone with Sam Grace in charge. They've now got a new manager, by all accounts, is a very, very good manager. Signing 9 players, I think that is there, or 10. Will Norris isn't going to come in to be a number 2, considering he's just won. I think he was in Team of the Year for League One last year and won the League at Portsmouth. Finback's obviously come from Forest. Xavier Simons from Hull on loan. He's not going to come in to just sit on the bench. They've not only lost Mark Butcher and Aaron Morley from midfield. They've been doing okay without them. They've got Alex Lowry, a midfielder, in. Adam Reach was a surprising one, because he's going to take at least 2 months to actually get going.
Yeah.
But does offer that experience. And obviously they brought Sonny Bradley in because Caleb Taylor went back, and then Caleb Tabor came back. So I would probably give Wycombe's transfer window a B. I'm not going to give it an A, just purely because I think they've now got too many players in and a new manager. I do think they are going to struggle to find that consistency in the second half of the season now.
Is it one of them where if you do too well, then you kind of overdo it? So yeah, I agree. A B seems about right to me.
Yeah, so Wycombe Wanderers, you get a B. Wrexham. I mean, they needed strikers. They've
done it.
They've bought the 3rd top scorer in League One in Sam Smith with 11, and they've bought an English international in Joe Rodriguez. So they've done the bit of business they needed to, and didn't lose any of their key players. So I called that a successful window. So I'd probably give that a B as well, to be honest.
I mean, I don't get how to me it's got to be an A. But the only downside is we have to say allegedly, of course, because we don't know the rumours, but the money that will have been splashed about for this, Jay Rodriguez, I imagine it's not going to be cheap. Is it? That man has been on Premier League wages. He's not going to be cheap. Sam Smith, okay, you could argue he wants to get out of a club that's unstable in Reading, so that might have been a bit cheaper than probably market value, but still not going to be cheap. But for Wrexham, I don't want to say money is no object, but money is no object for them, so I'll go with an A, I think.
Okay, that's fair enough. Ryan Reynolds can always go and do another Deadpool film if he wants to up the Wrexham investment, can't he?
Yeah,
so, moving on to Wigan, they also had a busy transfer window, but losing Taylor Asgard is one of the best creative midfielders in the league, 8 goals before leaving for Luton. Other than Owen Dale on that list, I don't think it's been that a brilliant of a success, this transfer window for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just one of them things, isn't it? It's like with Wigan, you I don't want to say you struggle to see the thought behind a lot of it, but you struggle to see kind of like we've just come off the back of talking about Wrexham, where they knew the target areas and they got what they needed to. With Wigan, I don't see that, and whenever you lose, who I'm going to say is their best player in Telo Asgard, probably. That's, who knows how much money they got for it, probably quite a bit, but I'll go with a C. I don't think it's been a failure, but I don't think it's... And for Wigan, they're not playoff contenders. They're 10 points off that. They're 9 points clear of the drop zone. They'll get through to the end of the season, and for Wigan, that's probably all they need.
Yeah, I'd probably go along with a C. I think Josh Robinson's one for the future. Hungbo didn't pull up any trees at Rotherham. Will Goodwin's never been a prolific goal scorer, which is what Wigan need, only scoring 27 goals in 28 league games. Defensively, they're okay. John Mellish adds some depth after losing Paul Dummett. Ollie Norburn, experienced League One midfielder. Ronan Darcy has never really had the chance in League One. And then Owen Dale, we know his qualities. He's won promotion numerous times from League One. Is a player who was on my list for my club to look at. I believe, I could be wrong here, Callum, I believe I saw some rumours of Lincoln were also linked with Owen Dale throughout January.
Yeah, it was one of them. I think Lincoln have been linked with quite a few players over January, but I think the money that Lincoln were kind of expecting for O'Connor and a couple of other players never really came in. So they got James Collins. We'll talk about Lincoln later, but it was never really on the cards, I don't think.
Okay, moving on to Stockport County. I didn't think Stockport actually needed to do too much. They obviously lost Louis Barry, but they've replaced him with Micah Hamilton on loan from Middlesbrough, a player who is extremely explosive in terms of pace. May not offer as many goals, but his forward runs will open up spaces for other players. You've signed a target man in Sam Cosgrove on loan. Owen Moxham is one of the best midfielders in League One last season, not only at struggling Carlisle and at Portsmouth, where he struggled to break in. Brad Hills is another centre-half. Sam Hughes never broke in, so he's gone out on loan. And Fiorini, who they spent quite a lot of money on, has never really got going. I'm going to give Stockport a B, to be honest.
Yeah, I think whenever you lose Louis Barry, who at the time, and I think up until a couple of weeks ago, was still League One's top goal scorer, and I'm sure he's still top. He probably is still top of the goals and assist charts. That's always going to be really, really difficult to replace, especially at this level. But I do quite like the signing of Owen Moxon and Barnsley, Sam Cosgrove. Was it Seb's reaction?
Oh, it was brilliant.
On the live stream to that. Go back and listen to that. It's been clipped up all over our socials. I think Seb's reaction to that probably sums up what he thought to that transfer as well. So
yeah,
obviously they've kind of balanced that out by getting, well, at least temporarily rid of Luis Fiorini. Imagine some of the wages will be balanced out on that one. So Stockport, I'll go with B. They've tried their best to replace Louis Barry, but I mean, we know what Louis Barry offers. Yeah. It's going to be very difficult to balance that out, I think.
Yeah, so Louis Barry is no longer the top scorer. Richard Cohn here is now top with 16 in League One. Barry's second, but Barry, as you said, is top of goals and assists still by 1. Still got 17.
Man, no. And he's not been here for a month, has he? So.
Yeah. Stevenage, I mean, we had Owen on the deadline day stream, and I did say to him that I find Stevenage really boring. They're just kind of there. They've impressed me in recent weeks. They do pick up results against better opposition because they are so solid, and they're such a horrible team to play against. The Carl Edwards signing kind of shows that they want to go in a different direction with creative players, but at the moment, all their players are contracted. If you're a club, you're not probably going to look at their players and go, we must sign them, because they are just like, if you put them all together, they're really good. If you take one out, I just don't see they've got the individual quality to succeed elsewhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The struggle with Stevenage is because their system is so defined.
Yes.
It's like changing that ever so slightly can have, I don't want to say catastrophic consequences, but we've kind of theorized it before, where if they try and change the style slightly next season, try and open it up a bit more, like we've kind of theorized they might do, that could end terribly for them. So I think it's an interesting signing, Kyle Edwards. It's kind of like a dip the toes in the water kind of move and see what happens for the rest of the season. They're in no real danger of going down at all, 15 points clear of that. You could kind of argue, well, why aren't they making a push for the playoffs? They've got games in hand, they win the game in hand, and they're 1 point off the playoffs. Stevenage are. They've been quietly doing really, really well recently, but we'll see with Stevenage. I don't think you can judge them really off this transfer window. So I'll go with a C, not because they've done anything badly, but just because they've not really done a huge amount.
Yeah, I think they've lost one of their last 8 league games, and that was at home to Wigan. And they've beaten Wrexham in that time at Wrexham. They've beaten Barnsley. They've drawn a couple of 0-0s in there. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to go with a B, because they didn't lose. Other than Nathan Thompson, they didn't really lose anyone that's going to affect their first team. And Nathan Thompson was 34, and they got actually a little bit of money for him. So I'll give them that one. Shrewsbury, I mean, it's Gareth Ainsworth doing what Gareth Ainsworth does. While they're still 7 points from safety, if you go through their results, they have improved. They're not losing. Three of their last 5 losses have been 1-0.
Yeah.
And their last 2 wins have been 2-1. So they're always in games. And eventually these little fine margins, they do twist. Adding Callum Stewart and Dinanga and Oliver. So that's 3 attacking players into their squad. We haven't seen about Stewart yet, but he's the top scorer in the National League South. There's rumours, I'm going to say strong rumours, that their striker George Lloyd had interest of Leyton Orient, which was rejected. They've obviously got John Marquis. They've got a plethora of attacking talent now. And they only really lost, I know they lost Tom Bloxham, who was probably their standout forward player. Obviously, Carl Winchester going back to Derry for family reasons. He's got a group of players who, a couple of them he's managed before. And if you look at recent results, are playing for him and the club. And I still think 7 points from safety, they can get out of it. I'm still not convinced of Northampton. And we'll get on to Burton later, but they're also there or thereabouts. So I will give Shrewsbury, I don't think I'd give any more than a B. I think a B is maximum I can give them.
The one thing that kind of, I mean, we know how difficult it is to sign players in League One and whatnot, but the one thing that does put me off it is how many of those players are from lower divisions. Like Eastleigh, National League Leamington, National League South, AFC Telford, I believe, are they National League North? Off the top of my head.
It's not our strongest subject.
Bradford in League Two, isn't it? It does like how many of those players that have come in are ready for a League One relegation battle. So to me, it has the hallmarks of a getting ready for a League Two battle next year.
Yeah.
And that's sad to see, because they've got the manager to stay up. So I'll go with a B-, I think, if we're introducing minuses into this. It's I wanted to see a bit more. I wanted to see a bit more kind of fight in them.
Yeah.
Kind of, but I know it's difficult with the financial climate this year. So
yeah, I think that's fair. I think C+, B- is probably around there, isn't it? It's not a strong B. It's just just. They didn't lose George Lloyd, who's been one of their standout players this year. Their Castledine's still there. They kept Taylor Perry as well. So that's my reasoning. Rotherham, well, they did all their business in the summer, have loaned 3 centre midfielders in. So it's clear where Steve Evans wants to strengthen.
Yeah.
I will give Rotherham a borderline A, but I'm going to give a very strong B again.
I mean, I like the signing of Louis Sibley. I
Mm.
think he's good for Derby. Obviously, not had a good run in the first team at all. But Dan Gore, I really like the signing of. I mean, that might turn out to be a terrible joke, but Dan Gore, he's been all right in the youth academies at Man United for years. Been a player that obviously sort of following Man United that I've known about for quite a while. And obviously, Peli Ruddock Mpanzu has made the headlines as well, hasn't he? I think he's one of the few players that has played in every division since National League as well. So,
for the same
players
club
that have got experience, that's it. So, very experienced and a lot of good signings there. Whether they fit, Louis Sibley, I never really imagined him as a Steve Evans type of player, but you never know, do you, in football? I can see where you come. So I'll go with an A. I think it's kind of like it's one of them that Rotherham. I think 3 players is kind of the ideal number in January. You're not messed about with it too much, to be honest.
Reading, who are in an extremely strong position in the league, just outside the playoff places. We thought there'd be a plethora of departures, and then there's only 2.5. I'm going to call it. Sam Smith for £2 million to Wrexham, and then Tyler Bindon going to Nottingham Forest, but he has returned on loan. And they got Billy Bodin on loan from Burton. I don't think I can give this more than a D, personally, which we know sounds really harsh when we know the off-the-field circumstances of Reading, but they're in a position where Noel Hunt and Ruben Sellers, what they've done this season on the pitch is remarkable. But they've lost all their goals in Sam Smith, and they've not replaced them, which is not their fault. It's the git upstairs. Got to be careful what word I use to describe him. So I can't give them more than a C. It's a low C, a strong D.
All I'll say is that if you're looking at the league, Reading are in the best position they've been in years to get promoted out of this division. And if the owner can't see that, and now is the best time to invest in this football club. Yeah. And he's not done it. He's really not done it. You imagine even with Billy Bodin coming in on loan, Burton's got far too many players at the minute. So that you can imagine that Burton would be happy to pay some of his wages just so that some of them they're not paying. It's just disappointing. I don't think you can even give it higher than an E. And that's not, obviously I understand the Reading club's point of view, but you have to give it an E because that's on paper.
Yeah, I think that it's fair. Peterborough, now a club that is actually in danger of getting relegated. As difficult as that is to hear and say, because they're 19th. They got battered by Bristol Rovers last week. They lose Joe Roundell, who I believe was out of contract and was in and out of the team. But they've signed a player from Chippenham, who's not going to be ready. Sam Hughes on loan from League One rival Stockport, who barely played. Carl Johnston to replace Sam Curtis from Fleetwood. A Swedish striker who did score in his debut, to be fair to him, and Tyler Eden, who struggled to break in at Charlton. And I'm right in saying he struggled to break in at Lincoln as well. Is that fair?
Yeah, he was in and out at Lincoln. He was a good player, to be fair, but he kind of wanted to push up the leagues. I think he tried to go in the Championship. So, but in terms of Peterborough, it does feel like they've signed too many different types of players. They've signed a project player from Chippenham. They've signed an experienced players in Theo Eden and Sam Hughes. They've signed a lower league player in Carl Johnston. And then they've just had a swing at a foreign player as well, which we know that can be a hit or a miss in League One. So Peterborough, I'll go with a C. It just feels like they're swinging, and we could be talking about those project players in a bit as great successes, and we'll have to look back on this as a mistake. But they're in trouble, and they've not signed any great established other than Theo Eden, I'd probably argue. Yeah, they've not signed what they needed, and I'll go with a C. Yeah,
I'm going to go with a D, a borderline. This one borderline is E for me.
Yeah.
Northampton, I don't have too much to say on Northampton, a bit like their business. A couple of loans, Liam Shaw in, and then Ben Fox out. They kept hold of Sam Hoskins. I suppose that's a positive. D.
It's very much just wait and see how it goes. Like if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, if it's, do you know what I mean? Those sort of lines. The catchphrase I'm trying to say. They're above the relegation zone. The 5 points above it. That's where they'll be for the whole season.
Yeah, that's probably a fair point. Yeah.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. So
Mansfield, they've added the experience of Jordan Rhodes, a youth prospect, and Callum Vickers on loan from Brighton, and Matthew Craig, highly rated Matthew Craig, to be fair. Struggled at Barnsley, but was exceptional alone at Stevenage last year. Mansfield just also outside the playoff places, but they are 14th, and they are now 7 points off after a bit of a poor. They've lost their last 5. I didn't realise it was that bad. They've lost their last 5. They play Northampton, as we'll get onto later this week. But the threat of Jordan Rhodes is one of them names at League One level. It's like Heritage League One goal scorer. It's borderline B and C again.
I'll go with C. I think personally, I like Jordan Rhodes as much of a name he is. He's been very patchy. I can't think of much he's done this year. I know he's a big name, and obviously, in terms of name, it's a big signing for the club. But I'll go with C. Again, you want to get some consistency in those players, and signing 2 youth prospects is not going to do it.
I'll let you take control of this one, but off the bat, I'm going to give Lincoln a C+.
I think B is probably fair for Lincoln. They kept the big thing is they kept hold of O'Connor, Arahan, and Rowan. Those 3 players were the most likely to leave. A lot of discontent in the club at the minute about the sale of Dylan Duffy. A lot of people think, well, why the heck did we sign him in the first place? But he's made the club a profit, so I don't have any issue with that. The big one for me is O'Connor. If he leaves in the summer, you'll just think, why didn't you sell him now for, I think, $500,000 was sort of what was rumoured. Why would you not sell him for that? I know he's important to the club, but we're not going to get relegated. We're not going to get promoted. Why would you not get $500,000 off him? You know, the club announced that they've lost £3 million this week. Well, this year. Yeah. So why would you not sell him and at least recoup some of that? Klukas is a really odd signing. He's not even been in a squad since he signed 3 weeks ago. But he's an old head. James Collins is an incredible signing. He's already scored twice for Lincoln. It'll be a great signing. Joe Gardner, yet to see what he's got, but a lot of people are already comparing him to Brennan Johnson just because he's from Nottingham Forest, which seems very unfair. It's a very easy one to make, but it's not a very fair one. So yeah, I'll go B on this one. JJ McKinnon's already doing very well at Burton Albion, so there you go.
Leyton Orient, other than getting a number 9, which we didn't get, I think it's been an excellent January. We've lost no key players, rejected £1 million for Ethan Galbraith on deadline day. I'm actually going to give us an A.
Yeah,
not an A star.
I can see why. I can see why. Your signings seem to be working already as well. I mean, Dylan Markande, he's already been in the score sheets, hasn't he, as well? Yeah. So you know, when they hit the ground running, I agree. I'll go with an A. Yeah,
Markande's got 2 in 3. Abdullah's got a hat-trick in 1 game.
Yeah.
Perkins been in and out. And Randall Williams, I've watched him since he was at Exeter, a player I admire. And then Edmonds Green from Charlton, in and around the playoffs, a player Wellens knows. You go with that. So I think an A for Orient. Huddersfield, now, they're completely out of form at the moment, so I'm not going to take that into consideration. Michael Hellick's a big loss. I know they've chop and changed their back lot this year because of injuries and stuff, but Hellick is a big loss. They haven't replaced him. They've got a left wing back in Ruxon, 2 strikers in Taylor and Charles, who one of them, I think it's Joe Taylor, is currently out injured with a hamstring injury, and Tawanda Chirawa on loan from Wolves are B, I think. They needed firepower. They've bought firepower.
You wonder whether they're just signing like penalty takers for when the playoff final goes to penalties or something. That kind of seems what they've done here. It's just not replacing Hellick, which I know is hard to do, but they've got money for him. You could at least invest that even just short term into a loan or something. Whether they've got a player that can step up already and do that, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. I'll go with I'm going to go B- because I know they can't predict it, but Joe Taylor, the way they've handled Joe Taylor, a player who's barely played, and put him straight in, of course he's going to get a hamstring injury. Like, of course that's going to happen. That you don't do that with signing. You don't just chuck them straight in and expect them to not pull up injured. So, I'll go with a B-.
Yeah, they've put Radinho Balca back into the squad. He's played the last 5 games, which in terms they've all lost, other than 1, which they drew, and he only made 7 appearances last year. So.
It's not great, is it?
And Brody Spencer seems to play here, there, and everywhere in their defence. So, We'll wait and see if that was the right decision. Exeter, they had a really slow start and then had an explosive deadline day. Ed Turns, Angus MacDonald, Oluwabari all joined on deadline day. They've got the Alex Hartridge back, Ryan Trevitt back. So they lost Kramer to Brentford, recalled, and Milenik Ali, who was one of, I think, the best watches in League One this year in terms of a talent that's come from non-league. Obviously going to Luton. I think Exeter have had a really, really good January now.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to give Exeter a B+, A-. I think it's been a really good January.
The one thing that kind of like they've signed 5 loans.
Yeah.
That kind, I don't want to say it worries me, but it's just like it does feel, especially with that explosive end, it feels a bit panicky. I mean, I might be misjudging that, and it might have just been that they've waited a while to get their targets, and it's taken them a while to get them over the line. Does feel a little bit of a panic though, so that's why I'm going to go with a B.
Okay.
They're getting closer to the drop zones. That's why I feel like there might have been a bit of panic involved.
Yeah, I think for clubs like Exeter who are fan owned, loan, and with the amount of money that's splashed around, I think loans are. Well, I don't know if they had any loans in the first place, so they've used all their loan spots just immediately.
Yeah.
I actually think I have Ed Turns wrong. I think Ed Turns signed for an undisclosed fee. That one could be wrong.
Okay.
But yeah. Crawley. Now, I don't really have too much to say on Crawley, other than I remember a fans forum last week, and they said no more ins, no more outs at Crawley. So the very next day, Rafiq Khalil left for Dagenham Redbridge for an undisclosed fee, and then Liam Fraser subsequently came in. Kamari Dore had a decent season last season on loan. I think it was at Exeter in League One. But other than that, they've not added any real League One quality. Matthew Cox was on loan at Bristol Rovers last year. But they haven't lost any key players, have Crawley, mainly because they all left in the summer. But C.
Yeah, it's just whether any of those players can make the step up. I agree. We'll go with a C. I don't know what they can add.
Roy Feely's the interesting one because Barrow fans are quite happy that he left. Charlton, 2 loan signings on deadline day, and a creative winger, which was probably needed, and another centre half to replace the outgoing Edmonds Green. I mean, they've lost none of their key players. They've brought in a top League One, I think, centre half in Tom McIntyre and a really good creative outlet in Alex Gilbert. So I'm going to give Charlton an A.
Yeah, they're one to watch.
Yeah.
They're not one. They're ones to watch at all. They are. They're doing really well, level on points to the playoffs. I'll go with an A. Wow, it's just whether you just wonder whether they can keep going, whether that squad's got the. I don't want to say the desire, but we saw what happened last year. They just kind of plopped out how many draws they had in a row. So it's whether they've got that ability to keep going, but we'll see. I'll go with an A, sure.
Yeah, I just think with the amount of injuries they've got, I don't think they panicked because they knew they had injuries coming back as well. So, that's why we'll give Charlton an A. Cambridge, they signed 2 goalkeepers. One of them immediately got injured in Marco Morosi, so they leapt for Nathan Bishop. Ben Stevenson's come in for free, and then 2 loan signings. Don Ballard's a player I really rate. I think he's really good in front of goal, which was needed for Cambridge. I still think they're a defender short and a fullback short. For that, I will give Cambridge a B. I think it's been, while there's a lot of loans in there, I think it's been quite a good window. 2 strikers, a centre midfielder and a goalkeeper. So near enough a new spine. They're just them 2 players short, which is why I can't give them higher than a B. It's possibly a C.
You just wonder that because they've got so many loans, they don't want to have any. They don't want to have to pay those wages next year as well. I can see a B. I'll go with a C. I know this sounds stupid, but it's not exciting enough for me, and it's not like I don't think it's got enough to get them out of it. Do you know what I mean? But we'll see.
Now, speaking of excitement, Burton transfer window seems to be incredibly exciting every time under this new ownership. All the players that seemingly came in the summer, the creative ones like Ben Whitfield, Billy Bowden, Danilo Orsi, players who have a bit of flair about them, are now all gone. They're all gone out on loan. Yeah. And then they bought 6 new players in, 4 loans and 2 fees. John Daddy Budvarson, as we've said, has had an excellent start to his Burton life. Fabio Tavares is a player who, on his day, is an incredibly good striker. Struggled for minutes at Coventry, struggled with injuries. Kyron Lofthouse, I don't know too much about. Seb will probably be better placed. You mentioned JJ McKinnon. He's had an excellent start as well with a couple of goals and 1 defeat in 8 for Burton.
To me, it feels like they realised, the new owners realised that they needed to become a bit more League One.
Yes.
They were playing kind of like the dreamland, where you have to be clever with the players you sign. You can't just sign them because they look good. They have to fit a style. And to their credit, the owners have realised that. They've got a manager who knows the division as well. So yeah, I really rate it, and just for Bodvarsson alone, I think that how he's gone, I think you've got to give it. I'd give it an A.
I would agree. They're not short in any position either.
Well, no, you'd hope not with how many players have. There you go.
Bristol Rovers, the main one for them is they lost Josh Griffiths being recalled to West Brom. Jed Ward then subsequently came back from Forest Green, and then Miles Roberts came in on loan from Watford. Mark Butcher is a player that was excellent when Plymouth got out of League One. Struggled for minutes at Wickham. Romain Sawyers, we know what Romain Sawyers is like. He's been around years now in terms of on-the-ball ability. They did get a centre-half in Sil Swinkles, but that Josh Griffiths one is he's been their best player this season. So I'm going to go with a D.
It's kind of like Bristol Rovers. I kind of have to say what I said about Wigan and Northampton as well. I think we know what the situation is with League One. A lot of time you kind of just have to float a lot of the time and just see how you can get along with it, if that makes sense. With Bristol Rovers, I don't think they're in. I mean, as much as we've kind of mentioned that they could be in trouble of going down, realistically, I think they're probably all right. I'll go with a B. They've not done anything spectacular, but they'll survive, and for them, that's probably the aim.
Okay, and Bolton sacking Ian Evatt was probably the right call in the end, and they've got a promotion winner in Stephen Schumacher in. I mean, that's one of the better bits, probably the best bit of January business they did. Joel Roundell, I don't think fits their style. They didn't replace Dion Charles. Keon Atete's not that player for me to get you 10 goals between now and the end of the season. And then Alex Murphy came in on loan, left wing back to give competition to Sean as Randall Williams then departed. Still level on points in 6th. I'm going to give them a C.
Yeah, I think if we're not including managers as part of the transfer business, probably go with a D. They've not done anything. But the thing is with Bolton, it's not necessarily about the players they needed to bring in and get rid of, is it? It's all about, I don't know, it's all about how the players that they've got, which we know are good enough, perform. And obviously we can't include the manager in the rating, but with the new manager, I think that they will do. So
Blackpool, they bought Tom Bloxham, scored a brilliant goal in his debut, as I've mentioned a couple of times. Niall Ennis scored in his debut as well, on loan from Stoke, another League One goal scorer. Sammy Silvera on loan from Middlesbrough. I've not seen too much of him, but they did lose Carl Joseph, but they got a decent sum of money for him to hold, and he was never a prolific number 9. Big wages like Ollie Norburn, Elliot Embleton all gone. Jordan Rhodes gone, and he was never consistent, doesn't really fit Steve Bruce's style. I would have liked to have seen a bit more, but I don't think it was terrible. So lots of Bs being given out, but a B for Blackpool.
Yeah, I feel like that's the kind of thing with January, is it's not enough time, and because of how it is, it's hard to have a standout window. Blackpool, I can agree with a B. Kind of maybe pushing on an A. It just depends, because they're kind of in the hunt for playoffs if they can get that form going, and if clearing out a bit of deadwood helps with the squad morale, I can kind of go for it.
Final 2 teams now before we motor through the review, because this has gone a lot longer than we expected. Birmingham, Grant Hanley, Kieran Dow. I mean, Grant Hanley and Kieran Dow in League One is a bit of a joke, quite frankly. They didn't lose anyone. They've kept all their players. I think an A for Birmingham's very fair, to be honest.
It just shows what you can do with money. A, probably A star, but it shows what you can do with money in this division. I'm not going to say players don't care, but the facilities at Birmingham will be great, so that'll be them going for it. And at the end of the day, what would a player rather be doing? Winning in League One or losing in the Championship? And
Birmingham will be
tapped into. They'll be in the Championship next year and probably not losing in the Championship either.
Yeah, I'm happy you meant, they'll probably be mid-table next year at least. And the final team, Barnsley. And now I'm giving these an E, which may sound harsh.
Yeah.
But they needed a striker, a prolific goal. That's all they were lacking. So, and I remember when I mentioned to Seb that Ben Killip, like literally Seb came on and I went, Ben Killip's left. And he was like, what? And it was brilliant. But like Callum said, go on our socials and have a look at the clip. That happened. Then they signed Dexter Lembixa and Clement Rodriguez, a man who's got 4 goals, I think it was in like 19 games. So not exactly what they need. Then Sam Cosgrove left and then Lofthouse left. So they've not recruited anything of what they needed. And if anything, they're actually weaker now than they were at the start of the window.
Yeah. DE is kind of the vibe here. And it does feel again like they're, what's it called? They're just swinging. I can't remember which team I mentioned it for, but it's like Peterborough. Swinging, probably most of these are going to be misses. You got a player coming in from the Irish leagues, which that we know they take a while to embed in. Someone from Bastia as well. That feels like it's not a smooth transition, is it? And then 2 loan players from Premier League clubs, which we know takes a bit of transition as well. So, yeah, we'll see with Barnsley, but my hope's not there. They'll get playoffs now, but my hope's not there for them. Anyway.
Before we move on to the last bit of the preview, we had a question from a viewer who I saw on the YouTube comments last week about the standards of refereeing and wanted mine and your thoughts on the standard refereeing in League One this season. So I'll let you go first.
I mean, we talk about like obviously referees in English football. We know the situation is not great, but I mean, it might just be me more as a person, but when you berate someone so much for how bad their performances is, and I'm not saying you should do that with referees, and I'm not saying they're immune from it. I think there's got to be a balance, and the amount of abuse that we're giving referees at the minute. You know, I saw someone say there's no wonder we don't have like a Howard Webb anymore, because we've abused referees so much that no one wants to become a referee. There's probably a Howard Webb stood in the stands at every single week, but because he's been put off being a referee because of how much abuse he gets. I don't think it's been League One level officiating. You're not like players have off weeks, referees that you're never going to get. You know, and none of us want an AI or a robot referee at all.
No,
because it's football. And referee, you know, I'll get grief for saying this, but a referee making a mistake is part of why we all love football, because we can all get angry about it, and we can all rally against an enemy, and we hate the referee. The referees are whatever. So I think that's part of it. But yeah. Well, if we're giving grades, I'll go C+.
Yeah, I would agree.
But it's nothing. But that's what you want.
Yes, so I'd give the referees a C+ and the linesmen a U, because the linesmen they are useless.
After James Collins' penalty and Rico Hattia, well, I'm still not sure on that one. But anyway.
So we now have about 10 minutes to rattle through 8 games. So this is going to be a speed run. So we're going to start off with Mansfield versus Northampton. Out for Mansfield versus the Northampton side, who need the points, with Burton Albion clawing their way back up the table. Northampton's away form is pretty shoddy. Mansfield are quite a strong team at home. I will go 1-1 draw.
Northampton are due a loss. Considering the last time they won a game, they lost straight after it as well. They beat Burton and then lost to Lincoln. This game has quite a similar vibe to it. They've just beaten Huddersfield, which I suppose is a bit more impressive than beating Burton. But I'll go. What did you say you're going for? 2-2. I'll go with 1-1. I'll go with 2-1 Mansfield.
Okay. Moving on to Saturday's early game, it's Stevenage, an informed Stevenage versus an informed Charlton side. So this is probably one of the games of the weekend. The reverse fixture, Stevenage won 1-0. As we know, Stevenage don't lose by many goals. They got 3 goals in their last away game at Wrexham, which near enough doubled what they had previously. But I just think with this Charlton side at the moment being on the run they're on, I think they'll win 2-1, especially at home.
Stevenage are scary. They've almost they've added 50% to their to their goals scored in the last 3 games. So I'll go with. I think I'll go with a Stevenage Charlton. I'll go with a 2-2, I think.
Okay. And then we got another, to be honest, pretty top game. Stockport County versus Barnsley. Barnsley also 1 point just outside the top 6. Stockport well and firmly in the top 6 now, 6 points in after they ended Orient's run. 3 clean sheets in a row, 4 wins in a row for Stockport. As we've said, it's one extreme of a good January to a bad January. I'll let you go first on this one.
Stockport Barnes, I just quite like the run of form that Stockport are in. I think they're very much unstoppable at the moment. Obviously at home, that kind of helps as well. I can see a 2-0 here, I think.
Yeah, Stockport's away for a home form is outstanding as well. 30 points from 15 home games at home for Stockport. I will go 2-0. I think that.
Copying each other. Beautiful stuff.
For Bolton versus Crawley, two teams have already spoke briefly about their fortunes this season. So I will go 3-0 to Bolton.
3-0 Bolton. Bolton, yeah, they've kind of picked up, haven't they? Well, they had, and then they lost.
In and out, yeah, they're hot and cold.
But I think that's kind of getting used to a new manager. Having Crawley helps. Their form is very much indifferent and not in a good way. I'm not as excited for Bolton though. I'll go 3-1, I think.
Okay. Moving on to Burton versus Blackpool. Now, two sides again who are in very good form, because to be fair, Steve Bruce has turned it around at Blackpool in the past month. Undefeated, I think it's in seven games with 5 draws in that and 2 wins. So they're very difficult to beat at Blackpool. Burton 1 defeat in their last 8, as we mentioned. Another difficult side to beat. 2-2.
I back Burton in this one at the minute. I don't know what it is about them, but they're just doing so well at the minute. And that home stadium, the Pirelli, we know it's not exactly the best stadium in the league, but it's it's playing to Burton's advantage. So I'll go 2-1, I think.
Okay. And then we've got Huddersfield versus Reading. Huddersfield lost their last 3. Reading ended their run of 4 successive defeats last time out with a 1-0 win against Bolton. We know Huddersfield's home form, is quite decent, and Reading's away form is quite poor, which means this should be a pretty easy game to call on paper. It all depends, I think, for me, if Joe Taylor's back for Huddersfield.
But to me, it just depends whether Huddersfield show up. Joe Taylor or no Joe Taylor, they just need to show up. And 4 without a win is not great for a side who, a couple of weeks ago we were talking as potentially challenging the title. So I back Huddersfield. I think this is kind of the game that they need. I'll go 2-0. I'm
going to go 1-1. I'll go for a 1-1 draw. Yeah.
So we think there'll be 2 goals in this game. It's just how those are split.
Next is Lincoln versus Cambridge. Again, 2 sides we've discussed heavily in the transfer segment. I think Lincoln will win 2-0. It'll be a Lincoln performance from last year where they just scored 2.
Yeah, I think it was about this time last year where they beat them 6-0. To me, it just depends on how James Collins. I mean, already he's become Lincoln's go-to player at the minute. We'll see with Lincoln. Very much up and down at the moment. They kind of excited us with that win against Peterborough, and now they're kind of gone back to the side before that we were just like, oh, great, another Lincoln game. So I'll go 2-0, hopefully.
Okay. And then I think we've got the final League One game of the weekend is Rotherham versus Shrewsbury Town. Now, I think this one is probably the most boring game on paper because the ball's going to spend most of the match in the air. Rotherham, as we know, have struggled against sides who sit back and they've got to try and break them down. I'm going to go 2-1 Shrewsbury, especially after Rotherham got knocked out of the EFL Trophy midweek as well.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I've gone with 1-1 in this game. I think it'd be 2. I don't want to say evenly matched sides, but just 2 sides who cancel each other out. That sort of thing. It's not going to be an easy game for either. But a shortened amount of fixtures, obviously, because we've got sides in the FA Cup this week.
Yeah. So there's 5
5 of them.
League One teams in the FA Cup. How many do you think will be left at the end of it?
Realistically, 1.
Yeah.
I can see one. No offense to Orient, but
No.
Man City and Man City, it's just not going to happen. It will be one of the best shocks we've had in a while in the competition if Orient get through that one. Exeter against Northampton. Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, you can't see anything
Nottingham Forest. They've just scored 7 against a decent Brighton side. Wigan against Fulham again, Premier League quality. Birmingham against Newcastle. We know Birmingham are a good side by League One standards, but Newcastle are one of the form teams in the Premier League at the moment, I believe. So they're not doing too badly on Newcastle. Again, it depends what sides these teams put out. But if Newcastle put their first team out, as much money as Birmingham have spent, they won't lay a glove on them. But the one that I do think will go through is Wickham against Preston, who I can't remember off the top. I'll get the championship table up, but I think they're just very indifferent. I've always remembered
16th,
Preston as
Preston.
15th. They're a very indifferent side. Preston, the level on points with Oxford at the moment. So I can see Wickham causing an upset. I think they've got the players to do it. So that's what I think.
I would agree that Wickham. Orient won't beat Man City. I'd take scoring a goal against Man City as a win.
Come on, where's that naive optimism?
If Orient beat Manchester City, we need to come up with some sort of forfeit, weirdly, that my club has beaten the Premier League champions. So we'll think of that, and then we'll put it out if it ever happens. I agree with you on Forest. They'll beat Exeter. Fulham will beat Wigan. And then Birmingham, like you say, it depends what teams set out. But this to me has like a proper Barclays vibe to it. Old school Premier League 100%. Year vibe. When Alex McLeish, I think, was in the Birmingham dugout. And you had, who would have been the new cut? It'd have been like Sam Allardyce, Joe Kinnear. They had so many around that time.
Was it Chris Hughton as well?
Chris Hughton, yeah. Barclays vibe that game. So
Andy Carroll up front with was it Pavlic? Who was the big geese they had up front? Zigic.
Yes, Birmingham had Zigic, yes.
Zigic up front. Yes. Zigic against Andy Carroll.
If there is any Birmingham fans watching, let us know in the comments what your Barclays player is. So, like Zigic, for example, when you were in the Premier League, you just had this one player who was Barclays vibe. And we just mean like old school player. When you see, as soon as you hear 2008 Premier League season, who is that player you think of? And I'd quite interested to hear from that for Birmingham fans.
Zigic was a lump. I love him.
He was like 6'9" or something.
Yeah, he is insane. Yeah. I'm sure I've got him in like a Match Attacks card or something from back in the day. Jesus.
So that about wraps up this Prime Barclays here, League One Lowdown show. If you have enjoyed, make sure you leave a like if you're watching on YouTube. And while you're there, please do subscribe to the channel. It'd be very much appreciated. Share with your friends if you do like the podcast, if you've got any League One mates. And thank you everyone for listening. Look after yourself, and hopefully we'll see you next time.